Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Daniel Rosal. I'm the founder of DSR Ghostwriting, a writing service and marketing consultancy based here in Jerusalem. And I wanted to talk about in today's quick video for my YouTube and LinkedIn about a few of the alternatives to hiring a PR agency for public relations. So a lot of startups and small businesses are really interested in PR, in leveraging PR in order to build their brand awareness, get their name out there. Also helps inbound marketing. But a lot of small businesses in this category don't have the budget for a full-fledged PR agency service. So when we're talking about PR retainers, just to give people some kind of rough ballparks, depends a lot about the size of the agency. You know, you have boutique PR agencies on the smaller scale. You have household name, big city PR agencies at the top of the scale. But these retainers can stretch from as little as, let's say, $1,500 per month, right up to like $20,000 at the very top scale for a big name PR agency, for a relatively well scoped out monthly PR retainer. And that's kind of marketing budget that a lot of smaller organizations simply do not have at their disposal. So for those looking to leverage some of those benefits of public relations without spending that kind of money, there are a few alternatives. I'm going to run through those in that video. The first thing I'd suggest, and this is clearly a self-serving recommendation, is using the services of a freelance writer. So you might be wondering, what's the connection between PR and freelance writing? So working with a freelance writer, you can get some of the work of a PR agency done. And I emphasize some here. I'm talking specifically about written deliverables. For example, thought leadership writing for placement in trade media, speech writing, social media management. Those are some of the activities that PR agencies often cater to, and that if you're working with a freelance writer, freelance PR specialist writer, then they can take care of some of those activities. Recommendation number 2 is to use a solo PR pro. So you have, just as you have freelance writers that are basically one-man shops, such as myself, you also have independent solo publicists that are basically one-person operations, and their rates tend to be lower than an agency. When you're paying a retainer to a PR agency, you're typically getting an account manager managing the account, working with an internal team of assistant account execs, maybe more senior people, depending on the priority of the account for the agency. And if you're just going to be hiring the services of a single PR professional, a solo PR pro, independent PR pro, these are the kind of search terms you want to be looking for, then that can work out too. You might find that these PR people, solo PR practitioners, are also able to write, or you could try to couple a freelance writer with a solo PR pro. Final recommendation is to do PR for yourself. So I know it might sound daunting, but there are definitely some things you can do. And I wrote recently a Medium article in which I just discussed some of my ideas for how smaller organizations can sort of get some of the benefits of PR. One of those recommendations was signing up for Help a Reporter Out. That's commonly known as HARO in the PR world. And this is basically a service in which journalists will request sources. So they're looking for comment for their news article. And what you can do is basically just respond to a few HARO queries. The journalists will see them, and if they're interested and there's a match, you can be quoted in the media. So that's certainly a way of getting publicity. Second thing is there's a cool website that I've been following for the last few months called podcastguests.com. It's basically a connector. So you have, on the one hand, podcasts looking for guests. On the other hand, you have guests looking for podcast appearances. And Podcast Guests is a email newsletter that basically helps to put those two sites together, sort of like a marketplace. So from a PR perspective, certainly a lot of podcasts have smaller listenerships that don't compare to the reach of traditional broadcast radio. Nevertheless, what they make up for in circulation, they often, what they lack in circulation, they often make up for in engagement. If you're looking to target a niche space relative to your industry, those podcasts can have a very, very engaged listenership, and therefore I never recommend that anybody discounts them as an opportunity. So those are my top 3 recommendations. To recap, firstly, you can look for a freelance writer to get some of those typical PR deliverables out the door. Secondly, you can work with an independent PR professional. And finally, you can take the DIY approach and see how far you can get by doing some of your own PR. So I hope that video has been helpful. If you're interested in learning more about what I do and thought leadership marketing and freelance support for that, then please check out my website at dsrghostwriting.com. Until next time.